Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Once again, a Monday edition. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the exciting action and the rest of it in the British Basketball League this week. Dave, on the subject of which our production assistant messaged me to point out that our army of listeners out there, well,
Yes.
Rob Hunt,
Yeah.
have decided to continue on with your great feature, hashtag AskSNB. So before we start, I'm going to, if it's all right with you, address Rob's tweet because it seems fairly pertinent to this week's game. So Rob has tweeted us, hashtag AskSNB. I am of the brackets unresearched view that there are less close games in the British Basketball League this season. Only 4 games have winning margins less than 5. The median victory is 16, and the last 10 games, average margin is 19.8 points. Any views? It is a tremendous question, Rob. So I've done the research for him because that's the way I am. So for the average winning margin, I've used the mean rather than the median, just for the sake of simplicity in an Excel spreadsheet. And this year, so far, the average winning margin is 14.1 points per game, which is up from last year's 12.8 points per game. However, the all-time average winning margin in British Basketball League history is 13.9 points per game. So we're not actually that far off that. And as it stands, this season would rank 14th in terms of highest winning margin. So above the average, but not massively. Just for sake of completeness, in 1989-90, the average winning margin was 18 points a game, which is the most. The least was in 96-97, 11.4 points per game. 2020-21, 2017-18, 2016-17, all recent years that were higher than the current one. And if you go back from 2012 to last season, the combined average winning margin for the 11 years is 14.1. So basically the same as this year. The other point that Rob makes is there have been 4 games of 5 points or less, the average for which over the course of a season is 48.2. I don't know the exact number of games we're going to play this season because of the playoffs now being a best of series, but it would project out to somewhere around 39, which is obviously on pace to be down below 48. And given the average through 31 games so far, we've got 4. The average through the first 31 games of every other season is 5.5 games of 5 points fewer. So again, less than 5 points. Important clarification. Although, if he'd said to me 5 points or fewer, which he didn't, he said less than 5, but if he'd said 5 points or fewer, there'd been 7 of those, and the average through 31 games in the history of British basketball is 7.03. So basically bang on. And finally, I know it's a lot of numbers. In terms of the last 10 games, I made it 18.8 rather than 19.8 points margin victory. There have been over 1,000 such spells of 10 games where the average was that or higher. The worst spell was in 1990, where the average winning margin through 10 games was 43.3 points, although skewed massively by lopsided cup games when they had all the teams in and you could win by 90. The worst run I can find that didn't include non-BBL teams such as that is 30.7, where there was a run of 10 games in the trophy in the league that went 51 points, 15 points, 7, close game, 80, 20, 65, 20, 20, 14, 15 in 1992. In the SNB era, which is all we care about, Dave, the worst run of 10 games I could find was from January. Again, it was 22.9, slightly skewed by the trophy games that were in there, but not entirely unprecedented in the SNB era. We've endured worse than this last 10 games, Dave. So all those numbers thrown out at you, in summation, to quote the late, great Dolores O'Riordan, I think it's in your head.
Yeah. But what about the standard deviations to these?
Well, I didn't have time to do all of that, so I just went with
I'm
the.
not sure it actually is, and I hear what you said about that. Because I think the interesting number would be, I think we've got more parity in the league top to bottom than we ever had, insofar as almost year on year, you pick out a year, we could look at the numbers and you could see a team that wasn't good enough to be in the league and would not win, would lose games by an exceptional amount of points. Be it teams that were on the brink of folding, be it teams that had lost all their money but were still in the league, that type of stuff. And so you'd have to probably take out, I think, the bottom two teams from each year to really establish, the games that we thought were going to be close that weren't close. But the numbers don't lie, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. Good job. And I do think there's a couple of differences, and I am just a little bit off with the world this week, just a bit about everything, because to be honest, I haven't really been particularly entertained with much of what's gone on this week in the games in the games we've watched. I'm also a bit irritated by some things that we were told were going to improve and haven't improved. There's still no movement on advertisements, for instance. So I'm getting the same 2 minutes of
Now, I'm wondering, Dave, are you logged into YouTube would be the question, because I know when I was watching it on one device recently, I was getting YouTube adverts thrown in, and obviously YouTube adverts based on Google, etc. And therefore, but if you're not logged in, they don't know what adverts to throw at you. So I think you then get the 2 minute feed. So I think it does deviate based on whether you're logged in or not.
I will. In that case, I'll retract. I'll withhold, and I'll come next week with it up.
But that is obviously YouTube advertisement, and obviously they had the issue with last week where YouTube were just banging them in the wrong place. So they might have turned that off. I don't know. But I definitely a few weeks ago went, oh, there's actual adverts in there rather than just the content holders.
I'll check that out. I'd like to hear, we've had an update recently about the increased utilization or increased viewership kind of figures, which is good if provided those numbers are accurate. And I say that about all numbers nowadays because I don't trust anybody about numbers ever since.
Except the ones I've just reeled off, obviously.
No, they're historical facts. They're not numbers, because they can be skewed. But historical facts card, that's good. I don't see any particular significant increase or decrease, to be fair, in the attendances at games. I don't gather any particular buzz about that. I'm afraid when one of your colleagues starts his presentation by saying welcome to the Copper Box in North London, it kind of frustrates me a little bit, because it's like, well, that famous North London powerhouse, West Ham United, playing just next door. So I think there's a lot of experimentation going on at the moment, and I think they need really to work out what they're looking at and what they're looking for in relation to whether it's in. I've seen no difference in any of the in-game shows or in-game stuff that's going on. I haven't spotted the production, as I've said before, that the camera work is good and better than it probably has been other than outside of Sky Games the past 3 years. The difficulty is obviously you miss stuff. We've missed. I mean, I'm still grouchy because we missed the best comedy moment of the first month, and that's Rob getting thrown out. And we didn't see any of it. So I'm kind of like, and there'll be other stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just a little bit underwhelmed at the minute. And as an enthusiast, that's kind of a little bit concerning. I hope it doesn't stay that way. Maybe a few. I think also the game structure. I think I've actually, to be honest, we talked about it in the abstract before the season, but I'm actually missing the cup more. And it wasn't just the cup games that because it was maybe one weekend in October, then one weekend in November was a quarterfinal. Yeah, it's not just that. Those games add immediacy and they add urgency to the rest of the games, because teams are realizing that, hang on, we've got to be ready if we're going to be playing in Birmingham in front of 10,000 in January, and everybody wanted to be doing that. And it added just a little bit of early season jeopardy that I don't think is there. And in relation to what Rob said, the question he asked, I think we might see more of it. I think we're probably going to see more of a home away skewing this year. I think it's going to be harder to win away, simply because teams are going to be playing lots of games. There's going to be lots of travelling, and the games that you're not up for are generally the ones when you're on the road. Then the scheduling has kind of frustrated me, because to think that it took until August 16th to come out with a fixture list that has Bristol playing Plymouth 3 times in the first 4 weeks is befuddling. And Newcastle playing Leicester, I think, in the first 3 times in the first 6 weeks. London playing twice as many games as anybody else. Back-to-backs, Plymouth having to go to Caledonia on a Thursday night, the longest trip in the world, or certainly in British sport. I like that. Obviously, we've talked before. We complimented the league on spreading the games out, which and then you can't knock that. That's the intention behind that is good, but it just strikes me again as something that's kind of been half thought through. Some of it, despite spreading the games out, you end up with Leicester losing a game in a back-to-back this weekend, and then Manchester going and losing a game in a back-to-back weekend. And then, of course, before that, we had Sheffield losing at Plymouth on a back-to-back weekend, 5 o'clock in Surrey, 3 o'clock in Plymouth. So I think there needs to be a little bit more transparency about that type of stuff. I do think, it's very good for, Bet with Dave, but it's not great. It's not great, I don't think, for the thing. And then, of course, the fact that there's ultimately, for whatever we say about the league, there isn't actually a league. It's just a regular season. And it'll be in this year, that's probably not going to have substantial difference to who finishes at the top. But, you talked about Euro Cup going to 16 playoffs with the top 2 getting a bye. Games to eliminate 2. Have the of the cup games in the meantime, and the both games are, it's going to be win 3 out of 4 to qualify probably. And that's me as kind of it's been in the past. It's just a little bit underwhelming, I think, at this point in time. And that's in a week which Newcastle haven't even played.
Not yet. Anyway, they're about to.
Anyway,
yes.
Well, no comment. But it's going to be tricky. Apparently, Sam Decker's back tonight. So I hope that there's a lot of internal thinking going on at the BBL, at the British Basketball League. I hope they're actually there's a real concentration on the product and not just the clips, if I can put it that way, the overall product. Because my belief has always been, and I appreciate this may be a kind of antediluvian dinosaurus nonsense, given that, where we are now in the world with media and that type of stuff. But my belief's always been that ultimately, to get people to come back, they have to be interested in the sport. To be interested in the sport, you have to understand the sport, or at least understand a little bit about the sport and be intrigued by the sport. And the 13 to 33 age group, some of that will come into that category, and others will just come along for a good night out with their mates, and that's fine as well. But if you're skewing everything towards that and everything away from kind of those who are interested in stories, in not people's stories, but competition stories. What we talk about on here, how are Caledonia going to get over the hump? How's Leicester going to manage with all these new players? Will Newcastle ever win again? That type of stuff. Or Surrey. I should have said Surrey. That type of stuff. And why is it happening? I think there needs to be a little bit more on that. And unfortunately, one of the reasons that it's not on that is because it's all not very consequential. A lot of these games at this point of the season aren't very consequential because we're looking at this point, and it might be different in a month, or it might be different in 2 months. But at this point, it is not far-fetched to say that you've got a fair idea who the 8 teams in the playoffs are going to be.
And there is that thing of Leicester losing 2 games this early is quite unusual in the last decade, and there might be more alarm bells ringing on that. Were they gunning for a league title, but in a regular season thing where the playoffs is the ultimate prize?
Or was there
finishing second or third is probably not a bad option.
No, absolutely not. And also, if there was the pressure of the cup on its way,
Yeah.
that really does. You saw the Gareth Murray. We saw the Gareth Murray speech at halftime against
Yeah.
Pleven. That wasn't a league game. That was a cup semi-final.
Yeah.
There's a reason he was talking like that in a cup semi-final, because there was more jeopardy in it. There was more desire in it. Everybody wants that big event, and we've rather castrated the big event, unfortunately. And that, to me, unfortunately, as an enthusiast, as a probably the enthusiast next to you, a long term, that to me is a concerning direction of travel. That's all I'll say. A concerning direction of travel. I don't think it's worked. Now, viewing numbers might say different, and ultimately might stay, but I think you have to have something which is sustainable. And unfortunately, I think in relation to the stories you tell, it's all right, watching Taj Green go to a record shop, or Ralph Thomas Edwards go and find out what the Bristol Foundation does and all that stuff. That's great, Phil. That's great, Phil. But eventually, somebody's going to want to know, well, is he good enough? Why are they losing? What are the basket? Because and I know from being involved and being around it, that there is a massive British Basketball League grapevine.
Yeah.
There is, isn't it? Everybody's talking about everybody else all of the time. What's going on with them? What's going on with them? And it's a very educated one, but it tends to be the people who are closest to it. And part of the issues that I think we've had in the past, and I thought we were getting kind of over them, and certainly the kind of proliferation of podcasts, including this one, helps that, is that the people on the inside really never communicated that message to the people on the outside. So I remember when even when we were even as the last few years at the Eagles, I made sure that I did a little 2-minute mobile phone interview at the end of a game. With one of the guys from Utah, and so they could put it on social media, just try to explain a little bit about what we was. And I know that's not professional. I know it's not glammed up in the way it could be. But I think it is important. And the difficulty, and I'm sorry, I'm nearly finished this particular rant now. But the difficulty with that is that it requires at times criticism. And it requires at times constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And that is something which, the league can go one of two ways. It can glorify everybody, and I've got a problem with that. It can put everybody up on a pedestal and talk about them, and what a great, this is, how great this guy is, how great that guy is, what a player that is, what a player that is. But that for every good player you see, there's generally a mistake at the other end.
Yeah.
There's a turnover. And there needs to be a balance in relation to explaining, unfortunately, some of the less welcome things from that type of perspective. Why has that coach done that? Why has that player done that? And what impact is it having on the rest of the season and all that stuff? I know we do a bit of that, but we're doing this posthumously, and we're doing it in our own time, basically. And I know you try and do it on commentary and just try and raise questions and stuff like that. But it's that kind of narrative which I think we're missing, and I think that needs a little bit of basketball inside a ship. And I think it needs somebody who's not unwilling to just kind of stir the pot a little bit, and a little bit less boosterism. That's probably unfair, I'll be honest, but it's where I see it at this point in time. Anyway, that's grouch over. Shall we talk about this nonsense?
Shall we talk about basketball? Let's just do fortunately, Newcastle didn't play this week, so we have no outrageous call against them to go through in Europe. Should we just touch on the two European games? Towers Hamburg, Veolia Towers Hamburg 94, London Lions 100. Another big fourth quarter comeback from the Lions in that one. 35-24. They were 8 down early in the fourth, and they were pretty comfortable, even though it's 6 in the end.
I thought they were great. That actually was probably the best game of the whole week.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I thought they were great because of the head coach wasn't there, so you got to give Young credit. And the day winning multiple games in a row.
And Jordan Taylor,
who was doing a lot of stuff in there as well. To be fair, but that's important. That type of leadership. That type of they have to have voices. And to be honest, it's smart coaching as well, because you can't be the same guy. You can't be the you can't immediately jump into the shoes of the head coach and have the same level of authority. So you have to delegate more. You have to have more voices around you. So because you got to take the group along by consensus, as opposed to taking the group along by the threat of withholding minutes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it works. But no, I mean there was a lane violation on the foul shot in the first half.
Yeah.
The referee looking at the right line.
Yeah.
And I just thought London in the fourth quarter, they just made all the plays they needed to, and Matt Morgan and Connor Morgan in particular. But basically, whoever's turn it was, Tariq Phillip made a really vital step back shot, and he's playing really, really well. And Luke Nelson came in and obviously made some shots. And I think Luke Nelson's played in Germany. I might be wrong.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Well, maybe he had played in Germany when he came out of college. So maybe he's trying to. He certainly made the shot against. He certainly played against Germany very well. So I think that's probably where I get it from. That in that game he was playing against Germany and they were aware of him. But no, they were really, really good. In the fourth quarter they got what they wanted and then they executed and they played the fourth quarter of that game like it was a mid-season game. I would have to say that. So. That's a big win for them. It's probably one of the away games they had to win.
Yeah.
I think. But overall, when they bring Decker back and integrate him into that, because that's the one kind of spot they've got at the moment. They're playing the three guards with Soluade and Nelson and Phillip and Morgan and Jordan Taylor. So they've got five there, and they're generally playing three of them at the same time. It's pretty rare he's playing Grantham and Morgan together and Connor Morgan together. So when Decker comes in and takes that spot, you've got a little bit more depth in at the guard spots. They've really got a chance. But Matt Morgan is a game-changing player. You don't need France Pro in scoring without being a game-changing player. And he's playing confident at the moment because he's able to score on the weekends. And they did really well.
Yeah, both the Morgans, Olasani Phillip, all 17 or more points. The other game in Europe, Spartak Pleven, I think that's how you pronounce it, of Bulgaria, 73, Bristol Flyers 90. First European victory for the Flyers in their European debut. They struggled a little early on with all those threes, but once they got going, this was a pretty comfortable game. This looked easy for them.
Yeah, we overestimate foreign leagues. As a rule, there's 47 in Europe. Anybody who talks about Europe as a
conglomerate,
a unilateral, it's just nonsense. You can't. The difference between Bulgaria and Kosovo and France Pro B and Latvia, whatever. They're all different. But one of the few overarching principles that you can probably figure out is at a certain level, our league is going to be consisting of more athletic players in their league. And that isn't stereotypical because obviously it's generally the case. We've seen it with other players coming into our league. So I thought in this game, the Bulgarians could shoot and they made some shots. But when Bristol got into them eventually and their athleticism paid off, and they obviously had Brad Green in his size, and Brad Green's perfect for a game like that because they're not denying him. They're not athletic enough to deny him the catches. They're just basically playing him straight up. And Bristol played at their speed. And when Bristol, emphasised their athleticism, and Lucas and Johnson and Ollison, obviously, and Jacob, that's four really athletic guys, long on the perimeter, who can make plays. And I think we'll see a lot of that. We saw that a little bit with the Newcastle game in Lithuania. That maybe our execution isn't quite as sharp as some of these teams, but it's fine your execution being short. If you can't get an entry pass in, it doesn't matter. If you've got to be able to handle the people being in your face first. So I think London, you take London out of Europe, out of kind of the BBL conversation, because they're not a BBL team or not a British Basketball League team historically. They're not. They're at a higher level than that. And they're not a fair reflection of where our league is. They're far higher than that. But the other three teams are, and I think they're going to do okay. Caledonia, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but we're going to do okay.
Yeah, we can talk about them.
Congratulations, well done.
Yeah, well done. We can talk about them now because just before we do, Green 13 of 17 for 26 and 7, 4 of the 5 starters in double figures. Let's go to Caledonia Thursday night. Caledonia Gladiators 99, Plymouth City Patriots 83. Although when you say we'll talk about them a bit, I think you're talking about the next game rather than this one. But we'll do them in order.
Really, yeah.
Relatively close game in the first half. The one thing with Plymouth is when the game is still on, they look so much better than when they get 10 points behind. They're not a team that oozes comeback when they get 10 points behind.
Yeah, they're a popped balloon, aren't they? Fizz off around the room and then just settle quietly in the corner. Yeah, I mean, they have players who can play Plymouth. Nobody wasn't playing this game, but they still have players who can play. Look, Atwood can score. We know that Johnson, the guard, Taylor Johnson can score, has quickness, and we know Wiley can score because, she's shown bits and pieces. He's a perfectly tenable BBL player. DeAndre Johnson has the tools to be really good. Hasn't quite showed it yet, but he has the tools. You look at him, think there's a player in there, and then you have Faulkner and Dusher as well, but the best player Plymouth's best player in this game was Joe Hart, and he didn't shoot the ball because when he was on the court, he was manoeuvring the offense in such a way that he was getting the ball where it needed to go, cutting, moving, throwing it in the post, playing defense, doing all the little things that helped everything else move. Right, and I thought their bench is obviously a struggle at the moment. Dusher is playing distracted, and I don't think their chemistry is great. Having looked at it, I think bringing in a guy, bringing in Zaire Light,
yeah.
You bring in Faulkner. Faulkner's going to do an interview during the week saying, "Oh, I just want." I think the headline was, "I just want them to hand me the keys." Well, what's Dusher think about that? Dusher's been there keeping them afloat for 3 years. So now suddenly he's coming off the bench, and he's got this new guy who's been there 3 weeks saying, "I'll give me the keys. I'll take over the franchise." All this stuff. You got to earn it first, and it doesn't take much just to set off kind of a set of chain reactions in a group, and then you're looking for which of the guys is going to be the one who kind of takes responsibility when things are down, and you haven't seen that yet.
No.
And finally, the biggest problem that they have is that they don't have a centre worth a name because he's starting Wiley, who is a 4 basically. There's DeAndre Johnson, who is a 4, he could be a stretch 5, but he's basically playing like a 4. And Noble has only been playing 8 or 9 minutes a game. So they are soft-centered, and that's defensively, that's very tough to win on the road when you're soft-centered. So yeah, they got some things to sort. And it might be personnel related, it might not be. Caledonia, I'm still not sold by. I mean, in this game, they were up enough to be pretty comfortable most of the time. But, when they put that roster together, I think they were expecting a little bit more than what they've got at this point in time. And winning games like that, and obviously it's the second game in the new arena. So there's a bit of a getting to know you situation with that. But, it's still pretty outside of Dubose is doing a heck of a lot of heavy lifting.
He is. Yeah, he is.
A heck of a lot of heavy lifting. And the only alternative then when wheeling as well. And I don't know, there's a bit of joie de vivre missing from them at the moment. They look like I feel a bit grouchy. I don't know. Just a little bit.
The Caledonia or the Dave Forrester of British Basketball League.
This week. It just like a bit grouchy. I just don't, and I'm not saying that's on any of the players or even on the coach. It just hasn't clicked. It's just the clicking thing, and it's when you've got it, and and for instance, at the moment, Cheshire, despite having this relatively similar record to Caledonia, they've kind of clicked.
Yeah.
Clicking with
Yeah,
Caledonia, it all looks a bit hard now. Obviously, the thing with clicking early is that things can degenerate very quickly. Whereas a team that's had to battle through it, everything to get to where the coach wants them,
it can be better in the long run. Yeah, it can be
you know,
tortoise and hare,
absolutely.
can't it?
Yeah. So that's kind of where they're at. But in relation to this game, there was a limited amount which took my interest, to be honest.
Yeah, 11-2 run just before halftime made it 51-41, and I've put Plymouth kind of deflated in the second half, which sort of fits with your balloon thing. So we're in sync with that. Didn't really look like mounting a comeback. So DeBose 20.7 of 10. Ali Hodzic 16.7 of 11. He also had 8 rebounds. There's 6 guys in double figures. Taylor Johnson 10 of 14 for 26 points. TJ Atwood 26 points, 12 of 18 shooting, 8 rebounds. Faulkner 4 of 17 shooting for 11 points, but 7 rebounds and 7 assists.
Yeah, and Dusha didn't make a shot either, and that's a problem for them if those guys aren't going to make shots. Interesting, you see, because Taylor Johnson's skill set is suited to attacking Caledonia, because Caledonia don't have fleet-footed guards. Taylor Johnson is a quick guard who can get into the crevices, and so he does well against them. Against that, Plymouth really don't have anybody who can body up. So Farah Al-Hodzic has 17 and 8, and he's only playing 20 odd minutes. You know, so it's not 17 and 8. So what he's playing 17 and 8 in about 23 minutes. You know, so that's really productive. So, but that's because there's no matchup there. So it's kind of about roster deficiencies, and and at this point in the season, coaches have to be looking at, what do we need? Where is our weakness? You don't want to be looking at where your strengths are. You need to look at, how do I cover it? Where's my weakness? How do I solve it? Do I cover it up? Can I cover it up? Is there certain ways we can play to cover it up? Or do I need something different? Or do I need something extra? And that's the game within a game at the moment that's going on. Plymouth really needs someone who can play in the middle. And Caledonia really needs someone who can take a bit of pressure off DuBose.
Let's go to Friday night. Leicester Riders 91, Surrey Scorchers 74. Even game early on. Surrey knocking down a few shots. Teams trading scores. Not really much between them.
Yeah, I thought basically as long as Leicester refused to defensively rebound, Surrey stayed in the game. But I think at half time, I rather imagine that Leicester got a message about the defensive rebounding, because they got a lot better at it in the second half. And Surrey's Surrey haven't got a lineup they trust yet. Defensively, I think they lost Hunt in the second.
Yeah, middle of the second quarter, Hunt went out with an injury, and it was at about that time that Leicester then started to build the lead. Mackenzie and Holmes pushed it out. It's 51-40 just before half time.
That's a big loss for them. I mean, that really is, because you look at Surrey, and Hunt and Jameson they have the basis of a reasonable front court. They can both play the 5. Hunt can step out to the 4. There's enough size and enough rebounding there. Neither of them is what you describe as overly skilled, but they are both, really, I think, potentially really solid BBL players and a solid BBL front court. But what they have is a preponderance of wings. In this game, I felt sorry for Mohammed, who started at the 4, because he clearly wasn't finding himself. He was getting frustrated with himself. He wasn't. I was surprised he started the second half. He was struggling to make a play, struggling to get. I think the second play of the game, Thomas. What's his first name? Thomas. How do you pronounce it? Is it Myron? Myron spelled without an O. Yeah. Okay. Myron Thomas. He's not the kind of the porkiest 4-man you'll ever see. Not the strongest 4-man you'll ever see. He took 2 dribbles with his left hand and just moved Mohammed about 4 feet back. Laid it in. And I'm looking at it, thinking, look, this kid Mohammed, he might be a 3, but if he can't guard Thomas, who is not the strongest 4-man in the league,
it's not Mo Walker backing him down.
Mo Walker backing you down, and you moved him too easy. So I think they have an issue there. But more than that, you look at them, they've got Theo, Josh Steele, then they've got Padiat Wang, and they've got Cooper. That's 2 of their imports, basically not trusted to play ahead of 2 of the British guys. That's what they've got. 4 guys who are all basically 3 men. and I think they're overloaded there. I think it's a problem because I think it means that some of those guys struggle to get into rhythm. And I think they realistically, particularly with Hunt potentially going down, obviously it's only a week, but you have to work on the fact that you're always one injury away. So you've got to try and make sure you've got a bit of cover at each possession. But if Hunt goes down, they become very, very small. Elliot Bailey stepped in, played okay. But he's going to be a spot guy to start with at the very most. He's going to be maybe a 10-minute guy. At that level to get used to it. So it's tough to see why they've got all those wing players and why maybe they don't need another. They need a proper four-man, I think, starting four. And then at the guard spot, they're alternating the three guards. But I don't think they're physical enough or good enough at the wing for those guards. I think those guards are skilled. Robinson, Gooden, and
Lawrence.
I think they're very skilled. We know they're very skilled, obviously. But they need a lot of legs next to them. They need some runners. They need some size. They need some athleticism. And I don't think there's quite enough of that to kind of maximize what they do. They probably also need somebody who can create a shot. And that's why Wang is there, I assume. But he hasn't taken any steps forward. If anything, he's possibly taken a step back this year. So that's another situation that they've got to look at, because they're now 0-5, 0-4.
Did I print that? I think it's 5, but I didn't print
5,
the table.
0-5.
So,
I mean, 0-2 you can handle, but once you get to 4-5, then suddenly it becomes 7-8, and you're looking at another season on the brink.
Yeah.
Probably nice.
The problem for them is the history, isn't it? It's the fact that it becomes a thing that you just go, oh, sorry, lose again. Particularly the manner of losing at home as well. So yeah, it is 0-5. I've just checked.
Yeah, and they're not Leeds, or they're not Leeds, or maybe
no, they're not. They're not.
Birmingham. They've got Birmingham. They've got some proper players. They've got some very good players. But and that's why I talk about the 1-10 being probably narrower gap than it probably ever has been. But yeah, you just fear for them, because the other thing is, they're 0-5, and Lawrence and Robinson have basically been healthy outside of Robinson getting an injury with 5 minutes to go in the last game.
Yeah,
basically been healthy, and I'm not sure you can count on them being healthy for 36 games on the schedule that we've got. It's so. Yeah, I think they need to have a little rejig of their roster somehow, or at the very least a little more concentration on who they've got. Leicester, I didn't think Leicester were great in this game. I thought their rebounding in the first half was pretty scatty, but I thought they tidied it up, and McKenzie came to the fore and basically pulled them together, both at the end of the second quarter and subsequently in the game.
Yeah.
And it got to the point whereby you didn't ever feel like they were gonna lose.
No, mid third quarter they had a 9-0 run. We're up 47, and that was basically the game.
That was when young Mohammed was struggling. He was struggling.
McKenzie, 7 of 10 shooting, 22 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Holmes, rather bizarre, 4 of 5 from 3. He was 4 of 4 till he missed the last one, but 1 of 9 from 2. Seems counterintuitive.
He's just trying to basically put other teams off the scouting report.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
18 points. Thomas, 14 points and 8 rebounds. Lawrence, 12, Jameson, 11, Robinson, 10. They were 10 of 38 from 3 and 15 of 40 from 2. London Lions, 99, Cheshire Phoenix, 80. No Decker and no Taylor for London. No Rye, obviously, still for Cheshire. Philip hitting threes. Matt Morgan getting to the basket. Cheshire not able to knock down the shots that they need to knock down if they're going to win games, and it's 19-6 after 5 minutes.
Well, it was after 5 minutes, but the game should have been half time by then because the old bus got stuck.
Yeah, they struggled.
That's the first one of the season.
Yeah.
Bus stuck. Not an easy place to get to, the Copper Box. It's not the worst. It's not Crystal Palace.
No, it's not Crystal Palace.
To be fair,
I was regaling them with tales of woe to Crystal Palace.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, Pleven's probably easier to get to than Crystal Palace. As you know. So yeah, but it's still you hit the M25 at the wrong time. It's not great because all these games tip it. kind of 7 o'clock, and if you're playing on a Friday night, you're hitting the M25 at 5 o'clock. It's not the best. And that's particularly the M1 even down there, you know. They would have probably been M62 A1M something. Anyway, I'm used to it. Old memories. But that's not good. So that's hard. Coming into a game late like that. They did okay, but they were never. But because London were ready, and London got off to a fine start, then it just became one of those games which, you know, unfortunately, I'm afraid, kind of contributed to my.
Yeah. They hung
Not
about.
ire, not anger,
No,
just
it isn't ire. It's just
kind of like okay,
yeah.
you know what I
They
mean, because I'm
they
looking
hung
at.
about without ever looking like mounting a comeback. Is what
Yeah,
I was.
exactly. I'm looking at like Holden, and Cameron Holden, definitely Cameron. I'm
Yes.
mixing up Gooden and Holden.
Yeah.
Gooden
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Holden
Yeah.
are going to do me all season,
Yeah.
right? Cameron Holden, played great, right? But everything he got was to his hard right hand dribble. Everything, you know, and London clearly weren't that fussed enough about him to try and actually do anything special about that. And he made some plays, and then Ulf comes in and he gives them a bit, and the guys who are shooters can make shots, but it was just kind of, we're waiting for London just to put their foot down and to step away from it, and that was with Jordan Taylor on the bench, I think, in that game.
Yeah, and it was Morgan, Matt Morgan with 8 in a row in the third quarter that did that to make it 63-47, and that was
I'm not sure how you
basically
guard
done.
him. I really, and in our league, I'm not sure how you guard him. I think you'd probably guard him with Jordan Taylor at the point and Josh Sharma behind you. But no teams in our league have the ability to have that apart from the team he's playing for.
Yeah.
You know, he has this kind of it's rare that we've had it's a long time in the league since we've had a guard who you could just give the ball to at a certain time and you know he'd just go off a 10 just like that. Because the scoring guards in our league in the recent past have generally been point guards, guys who handle the ball a lot, you know, and kind of two guard, like a pure scorer type guard. We haven't had that many of them. And a lot of the teams are running flow offenses, which kind of take you away from having the ball in the hands of one player. And he just seems to have the ability to say, okay, it's me now. Boom, boom, boom. You know, cut, curl, 3-point shot, go under a screen, give me the basketball full court. He scores 10 in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably three times in 5 or 6 games already.
Yeah.
Means it's not a coincidence.
Mm.
I don't really. I'm really trying to kind of think of, even on our teams, any kind of two guards who played like that. Leicester team, any of the best, anyone who's good enough to be on a good team. I mean, basically, not just somebody who's putting up numbers on and also a good team. I'm thinking, no, I'm not. Maybe Dre Parks would be the nearest one we came to. We played a year, and you could give him the ball and he could just go get a bucket. But you know, all the other, you know, I just can't think of anybody. He's just a totally different. He's a different level of Dre Parks.
Yeah.
About that. And so we should enjoy him. Enjoy watching him when he's here. You know, let's be honest. You know, when people, you know, I'm pretty low on the old. Oh well, it's only worth watching London because they've got the best players. Because to be frank, very few people in this country can distinguish your Matt Morgan from your Dre Parks or whatever. You know, they can't. But with Matt Morgan, he's a guy I would watch. He's one of the few, I mean, he's one of the few guys I would actually, you know, say, okay, here's my money, I'll go watch him, because there is a noticeable difference in his play.
Connor Morgan 17 and 8, Matt Morgan 16, Sharma 7 of 7 for 16 points. Lions 58% field goal shooting. Holden, you mentioned 11 of 15, 27 points. Shagwar 13 points. Both of those two came off the bench for those 40 points. Kristen 12. They were 6 of 19 from 3, and a couple of those were in the last 2 minutes, and that's not the way they play the game. They shoot 33s.
I mean, Rideau struggled a little bit in this game. He's a different level of defense to what he's faced. And also he's just getting off the bus as well, which isn't as hard for a point guard. So Holden kind of carried them a little bit as he was a bit longer and they were able to get his head down and get the basket. And London's defense was okay, but it was what it needed to be. It wasn't anything better than that. They're not playing to beat teams by 50 because they don't need to.
No.
I'm worried about what happens when they do.
Yeah.
If they do feel it,
let's go to Saturday. Plymouth City Patriots 68, Bristol Flyers 92. Noble still out. I assume when Bristol won comfortably on the opening day, their fans broke out the old football chant, "Can we play you every week?" Because they seem to play them every week at the minute.
It's not good. It's really bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad. You've got 36 games to play, and you're playing the same team 3 times in 4 weeks, or the first 4 weeks of the season. That just wouldn't happen in any other sport. Maybe it would happen in ice hockey, but
ice hockey, maybe.
Yeah. But then there's only 8
But
teams.
There's only 8 teams.
And they need to play each other to settle. Sheffield need to play Nottingham every week, don't they? So
fill the arenas.
Yeah. Exactly. I get that, but they play more games than us, and we've got 10 teams, and I mean, I went through and looked for a few more anomalies on the fixture list, and they are there. And and I say it's not my view of it is that it's not a concern for the owners, because ultimately they just want to know what their home dates are. And if the league says you got to play this team, then the coaches, complaining about it's kind of a sign of weakness. I don't want to play them 3 times in 4 weeks.
But they don't.
They don't. No, they don't.
They might not say it because they don't want it to sound like that, but they don't.
Exactly. So they don't. But they don't stir the pot. They don't cause any problems about it, and the fans turn up anyway, because 80% of the fans don't know who you're playing at home anyway. Maybe that might change. Hopefully it will. And that's but it's still.
It might. To be fair, it might be slightly different given the fan bases of Bristol and Plymouth. They might well know that.
I'm sure
particularly that game, particularly that knowing.
Yeah, I was talking generally. I'm sorry.
I agree with you in the general term. Yeah.
It probably would be, but it's like, no, this isn't something that we should be pushing forward at all, and they did. And maybe there's no other reason for it, but my guess is that the whole thing this summer wasn't very well run, and I don't think it's been. This is the thing. We're talking about making our league into kind of that really attractive situation for advertisers, for sponsors. You have to be across the detail to do that. I don't think we're across the detail at the moment. And the fixture stuff is an absolute indication of that. I think, we've all talked in the past about one team's played 10 games and one team's played 5 games, and it's a problem. Well, now we've put all these resources into spreading the games out in relation to getting them onto YouTube, all that stuff. But it's quite clear to me that the actual identity of the teams playing the games wasn't considered to be a priority either. In reality, if we were trying to kind of catch up on the fandom in this country, where basically in the sports that we're used to, you all play the same amount of games. Certainly in a month, there'll be 1 or 2 games out. Occasionally a Premier League football team might have a game postponed. There might be 1 or 2 games behind, like Luton were, because they didn't have a pitch, but never more than 1 or 2.
And
they would all, and also the games are reversible. So you would play one team one part of the season, you'd play everybody the first part of the season, and then the second part of the season. Now, I appreciate that's not going to be manageable in the British Basketball League. That would be a utopia. It's never been managed before. But there has to be a nod to it. A little bit of just a nod to
it ought to be closer to be manageable now that we've got Caledonia, Sheffield, Newcastle, Leicester.
That's right. I mean, for me, it should be non-negotiable. If you're splitting the season in 2 in January with a trophy competition, then when you get to the beginning of that trophy competition, everybody should play the same amount of games, subject to appearances. Like water flooding into Birmingham's roof, or or Crystal Palace not being playable because the sun's shining through the window. All that type of stuff. All real, people. All real.
All things that happen.
All things that have happened. But something like that, we should be on that situation. Instead, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, I haven't checked, but I'm guessing that by Christmas, London will be 8 or 9 games ahead of some teams.
I don't know the exact number, but I know Alaska's was going on about how they play 45 games before February or something or other. So and I know but interestingly, their European schedule is a bit wonky. I mean, they play the 1 game a week, but their home away thing is a bit wonky. It's like 8 of the first 10 are away. Or something.
I just think, lessons to be learned. It's a big one. So it should be in the box to be ticked. So anyway, because of that, we got a crap game.
Yeah, so tough to watch from a Plymouth perspective. They were 12-2 down after 5 minutes, and then after 7 minutes it was in double figures, and it never got back down into single figures after
it wasn't
that.
a balloon this game, was it? The balloon never got up.
No.
I mean, it was it was the dampest of squibs.
Yeah.
And it was a type of game which actually annoys home supporters because and there's a couple of messages about it because it was to lose the third time within 4 weeks in that way to a team that is getting better, no question, and playing better.
But who've just
British Basketball League team,
come back from Crystal Palace. I mean, Pleven.
Yeah, you say that, but I'm telling you now, it will have taken the Plymouth trip to Caledonia on a Thursday. It would have taken longer
it's true.
Than Bristol going to Bulgaria. And that's kind of the nonsense of, unless they got the plane. I'm not even sure you can fly from Plymouth to.
I think you can fly from Bristol though.
Yeah, well.
So they could drive 2 hours to Bristol and fly up.
Still not great, is it? And then you've got to find East Kilbride on the map. So I don't think that helps either. But Plymouth on that Plymouth Caledonia game on a Thursday night, I'm like, Caledonia, Plymouth have to be played Caledonia after they've played Newcastle or Sheffield. It just has to be an absolute no-brainer. They have to do a game on the way, and if they've got to do a night away, they got to do a night away. If it's a Friday, Sunday, it's a Friday, Sunday. But sending them up there on a Thursday night, and then that has a knock-on because they don't get back until 7 a.m. on Friday morning or something silly, right? That means the whole of Friday is gone. That means their body clock is stuffed up, so then they've got to try and practice on Saturday and then be ready for 3 o'clock on Sunday.
This was Saturday night. Sorry,
beg your pardon. The body clock is gone. Yeah. My fault. This was what my body clock is gone. Yeah. So they've lost all of Friday. By that Thursday, it's just not on, and that is going to impact competitiveness in the league this year if it continues. It always has to a certain degree, but this is a bit of a it's exaggerated this year because it's Thursday night games. So a team playing on a Thursday a long way away from home is going to have a problem, particularly if a lot of the Thursday night games are going to be in East Kilbride. So I felt a little bit for them in that way, but ultimately, they played like they didn't really like each other, I'm afraid. They didn't have any faith in each other. That's probably a better way of putting it. You didn't see, I couldn't tell you, other than Joe Hart, I'm not sure I could tell you who the leader is on that team. And Joe hasn't played for 18 months, so it shouldn't be him. Shouldn't have to be him. But he's the only one doing things which I think are close to kind of linking you in with winning, if that makes any sense. So they're going to have to get together very quickly. I think Drew mentioned on the commentary a players only meeting, something like that. That's the type of game which loses people jobs, unfortunately. You can't lose that way at home, not from the very beginning without not even a run. Never even had a run. No. And to be fair, last year they had, Rashad Hassan would drop them 20, whatever. And they haven't got that. I know they've got Atwood, but Atwood's a bit different. Atwood kind of picks his spots. I'm yet to be convinced about Atwood not just being a good stats, bad team player. If that makes any sense. It doesn't mean he's a bad team. It doesn't mean he's not playing for the team. He is, but he's a guy who's putting up numbers on bad teams or teams that aren't winning. And he has to demonstrate, I think, to that, if you're averaging 24 points a game and you can score at the clip that he can, and he's really talented, you can see that somewhere along the line that has to relate to winning. Otherwise, you're going to get that rep of a guy who puts up good numbers on a team that wins 6 games in the season. Whether that means whether it's him who has to pull them together, whether Dusha and Faulkner have to get together and figure it all out. I don't know, but they got to do something. Bristol just really did everything that they were meant to do. I thought. They have. I thought for a team that's played them 3 times, Plymouth's perimeter D on them was pretty awful. Watching Trajan Jacob come up off a handoff, catch the ball, square up, and shoot a 3, which he's going to make because he's a 40% 3-point shooter. At that clip was just pretty depressing. I thought, there wasn't much understanding of what they needed to do, and to a certain degree, you go back 2 years, the guy who they missed is a guy who's playing on the other team.
Who's that?
Raoul Graham Bell.
Oh, Graham Bell. Yeah, yeah,
2 years ago.
yeah.
Who had that kind of bounce and that kind of enthusiasm, kind of vitality about him. And he's kind of bringing that to Plymouth, to Bristol a little bit.
Mm.
And I thought it was really noticeable how much Plymouth were missing that, in that game.
So Atwood 14.6 rebounds, 40 minutes played. DeAndre Johnson 14 points, Wiley 11. They were 37% field goal shooting, 7 of 27 for 3. Hollison 8 of 11 shooting, 23 points. Green 15 and 9. Keedy Johnson 14, 12 of 27 for 3. They won the rebounding 45-32. And well, the team index is always a weird old stat, but 116 to 67.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch. Just on Ollison, we're kind of taking for granted a bit, but he is expanding his game. You can see it.
Yeah.
He's a threat from anywhere 28 feet in. But he has that, Drew again commented on it, he has that kind of poise about him, which tells everybody that he understands what's going on and he knows which are good shots. You don't see him shooting many bad shots, even long shots, even shots which are 4 or 5 feet outside the 3-point line. He's really taken a step. He's going to be a pretty good pro for quite a long time, I think.
Right, second game on Saturday. Manchester Giants 94, Leicester Riders 80. Robertson was out. Obviously, they're still missing Lee as well. This was almost literally score for score in the first quarter. Leicester scored 2 baskets in a row in the 3rd minute, and Manchester got 2 in a row right back. But everything else was alternate scores in the quarter to 28-27 at the end of the first.
Yeah, the kind of game that you don't like if you're on the back, or the kind of quarter you don't like if you're on the first end of it, on the back end of a back-to-back. Because from Leicester's perspective, who played the night before, Manchester get into rhythm, and Manchester are going to have more legs than Leicester. That's the reality of it. And everybody got shots, and the defense on both teams was not great. But it's always more sustainable if the team that hasn't played the night before and the team that's playing at home.
The same thing happened in the second quarter. Leicester scored the first 5 points. Then they went score, you score, we score. And then Manchester hit 4 in a row just before halftime. So it was 45-46.
Yeah, it struck us as one of those games that, who's going to score last? That's what it seems.
Yeah.
Who's going to have the ball last? And Leicester had a little bit of foul trouble. Played Lol a lot. I think Lol's becoming their kind of glue guy, because he played 30-odd minutes in this game. And I think he's a little bit more experienced and probably not quite as flaky's too hard a word. I wouldn't say
up and down.
Up and down, quite emotional, whatever.
Because the reality is the 2 leading scorers Leicester had in this game, I think were 1 for 9 combined in the night before.
Yeah. So, and you have to remember when you're dealing with rookie Americans in particular, it's very rare that they will have played at college back-to-back games.
Yeah.
You play, maybe if you're in the tournament at the end of the season, that's tournament basketball and everyone's
because Drew actually rang me in the day, because he was obviously at the Lions game and I'd done the Leicester game, so he rang me to say what happened with the Leicester game, and I said I didn't have the numbers to me, but I said Pinson and Asbury had whatever they combined was, and I says I bet you they both score tonight because they didn't last night. And that's
that's right, and they come out of it. And but then they got little from Thomas, and unfortunately they couldn't keep Bridges on the court because Manchester's matchups meant Manchester's losing their 2 big guys, Robertson and Lee, meant that Stampley started to play at the 5 spot. Stampley makes a couple of threes early on, and his quickness impacted Leicester's ability to play Bridges. Bridges only played like 12 or 13 minutes. Walker played 4 or 5 minutes, and they went a lot smaller the rest of the way, And at that point, I still thought Leicester would win at halftime because I thought the shots they were getting were better than Bristol's, than Manchester's shots. But Manchester played pretty well. certainly offensively, Jamel obviously is got a no substitution clause in his contract.
Yeah.
You know, and then you've got all these little guards, Bossier, Walsh, Harris. Not sure what's going on with McNeil. He hardly played. Who are all kind of comfortable with getting the ball, attacking, scoring, and pushing it. And when Leicester's offensive discipline broke down in the third quarter, Manchester got out and ran. That was what changed the game. Leicester's offensive discipline really broke down.
Let's get to the interesting call in the third quarter. 6:42 to go. It's an out of bounds Giants ball. To be fair, I wasn't 100% sure that it hadn't come off Walsh on the way out, but it is a Manchester ball. End-line ball, Asprey coming around a screen, commits a foul by pushing Anderson. The ball is in Borsier's hands at this stage. He then inbounds it, and Harris scores the 3. And Paul Unsworth, who's called the foul, gives the basket as well. And it's one of those where when the foul initially starts, the ball is definitely in his hands. It might have carried on to the point at which the ball is released from the passer's hands, but it wasn't even close to him catching it and then shooting a 3.
Thing you see, at that point, the referee is looking at the foul.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so he needs at that point a bit of help from somebody else.
Yeah.
Looking at the ball,
it's the baseline ref needs to say it was up or it wasn't up by the time you.
I mean, the baseline ref seeing the contact. But I can understand that if the ball's in his hands and you're 50-50.
Yeah.
And there's actually a call which I think in the London game, which I thought was also a pretty horrible call when they gave a 3 when someone set an illegal screen to set it up. It might have been. I can't remember it, but I remember it was they gave a 3 and an offensive foul, and it was like, you can't reward the shooter with a 3 if the only reason he's open is because you've set an illegal screen. Yeah. But this one, no, it just needed far better communication, because there's no harm in the ref calling the foul and going over and saying, look, I'm not sure, whatever. Didn't see when the ball was inbounded, but it might have been by the time he blew his whistle and had his fist in the air, the ball was in the air. But it wasn't close. It was miles away. And if the ball's in the shooter's hands, it's one thing. But when the ball's still in the inbounder's hands, it's something totally different,
So they gave that 3, and then Walsh scored on the inbound, and then Walsh scored again, and that was the first time in the entire game that either team had made 3 consecutive field goals, and the first one basically shouldn't have been given.
Well, obviously had 2 consecutive possessions rather helped, didn't it?
Yeah.
But also there was a call down the other end then when Lawton got called for a foul.
Yeah, that's my next thing. It's the next play after the 7-0 run. Pinson drives to the basket. I'm not sure that Lawton fouls him, if I'm honest with you. But there's a foul call, but it's a most blatant basket interference. He's pushed the rim up, and it's like, how can you not give a basket? Somebody must have seen the 3 of them.
No, for me, it was a goaltender. It wasn't a foul.
Yeah,
that was it. And so at that point, you kind of, what's going on here? We're going around in circles. There was also before that. Obviously, there was also the Asbury subplot as well, which is the first time we've actually got anything from most of those cameras. When at the end of the timeout, Rob's saying to Caleb Asbury, "Do you want to play or not?"
No, you see, I had the rugby on dual screen, so I missed that.
You didn't see that. Well, that actually happened. It's coming out. It's actually audibly you catch it. He says twice, and the commentators comment on it as well. Do you want to play or not? As he's walking up the town, do you want to play or not? And then Rob does that look to his assistant, which is like, kind of what's going on with him, and that's a rookie thing again. He's said something back in the timeout that he shouldn't have said. And there's times where you've got to bite, you have to bite your lip, and you have to avoid it. Now, it obviously wasn't particularly damaging because he came back in the game at the beginning of the fourth quarter. So it's not like he crossed a particular bridge that you can't cross, but it puts everybody on edge. It's not a question about what the coach and the player who've had that little kind of verbal disagreement think about. It's what the other guys are having to handle as well, because it just puts everybody on edge. Like, what's going on? So now rewind to have a look at that. It was pretty noticeable. But that was and they just weren't ready for the double header. I don't think some of those Leicester guys were quite ready for it. And Manchester, other than the past, other than when Leicester went to a zone and Manchester tried to figure out where the basket was for about 3 minutes.
So Giants had a 16-4 run to lead 76-60 late in the third. I think this is the bit that you're talking about now. Lowell and Asbury hitting 3-pointers either side of the fourth quarter break. Leicester posted 11 in a row, got it to 78-73, but Anderson then 5 points in a 9-0 response, and Giants were comfortable home.
Well, they were comfortable. I mean, they spent, they've got Giants are interesting because they played Nick Lewis is basically the backup point guard. Bossier played reasonably well, but wasn't trusted in the fourth quarter. Nick Lewis comes in as a point guard. That's kind of tough because he's not really a point guard. He's, it takes away. He can be a point guard, but it takes away from what he can do really well, which is scare you on the perimeter and open up the floor. Then for about 3 minutes to go, Harris became the point guard, and Harris looked like he'd never been a point guard in his life because he committed one 8-second violation walking the ball to the court. I think the possession before was an 8-second violation as well, walking up the court. And they didn't get into anything at all, and they were playing for a minute and a half. They were playing not to lose, obviously. So they ran the clock down. They changed everything. But Leicester, at this point, Leicester themselves had kind of not imploded, but they weren't all there because Mackenzie wasn't in the game. Mackenzie struggled in this game. And that's a couple of times. Mackenzie's kind of a leader by example, and if everybody else isn't doing what they want, I think that impacts him. If everybody else isn't being what they're meant to be, I think that's impacted him in a couple of games this season. So he was off the court at the end as well, which is unusual because you'd normally expect him to be the one who's kind of leading them back. And the game kind of fizzled out because Leicester couldn't make the shots that if they made a couple of shots, the game was on because Manchester were not comfortable defending that lead, even up 11 with 2 minutes to go. The game was actually still on, but Leicester just couldn't quite make plays because they were just a little bit gone as well. Then we had at the end we had the Jaron Holmes second rookie initiation of the season after trying to call a timeout in one of the games. We had the rookie who doesn't understand points difference, who decided he was going to pick an argument with Nick Lewis when Nick Lewis made a late with 7 seconds to go. All we're missing now is the rookie who doesn't understand. All we're missing now is for him to kind of complain when someone stripes the ball off the rim. You've got the full rookie initiation hazing ceremony. So, and that's not, he's not the first, he won't be the last,
No.
Don't understand, it's just, it's a respect thing and they don't get it. But to be frank, when there was 3 teams, when you played each other 3 times, it didn't matter.
Didn't matter. So
each other 4 times, it does.
Yeah.
And so that'll be explained to him. So just, Leicester, a young team, they'd won 4 in a row. It was coming in for it. And the second night back to back. It's hard. You don't the only way you can get you can't inject experience into people.
No.
You have to let them go through it, you have to find a way of managing as they do. Manchester, they play well. They made a ton of shots in their own gym. Their Americans stepped up. Harrison, Stampley in particular, really stepped up. And they weren't, I don't think, hampered particularly by not having Robertson because that you change the way you play then.
Yeah.
If Robertson's in the game, maybe Bridges is in the game for longer. Or maybe in the game for longer. Maybe that benefits Leicester. So it's not a question of, one guy short and we still weren't there for, we'd have been much. It wouldn't be the game.
Even though he's been playing well this year as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying it wouldn't have helped them. I'm not saying coach because Lawton got into foul trouble and got hurt. And I like Lawton. Lawton's played really well for them. But still, it changes the game entirely.
Yeah, it does.
But sometimes, playing fearlessly and having to play small, you can run that for a game or 2 and you can win with that.
Yeah. Harris, 20.6 rebounds. Anderson, 19.7 rebounds, 6 assists, 6 steals, 40 minutes. He'd have played 42 if you'd let him. Stampley, 13 and 7 rebounds. Pinson and Asbury both had 15. Lowell had 11, the only 3 in double figures for Leicester, who were 43% from the floor and 7 of 23 from three. Final two games on Sunday before we need to be quick now. We're getting closer to today's game. Sheffield
I'll
United.
start watching at 8:30 today's game.
Yeah.
I'll fast forward through the 2 minutes.
Yeah. Sheffield 96, Caledonia 78. Gladiators really struggled to score early on. They had 2 layups in the first 6 minutes, which were their only field goals of the opening 6 minutes, and Sheffield were out to a 17-6 lead.
Yeah, I mean I think the 2 layups they had was one was Dubose and another one was a Dubose steal.
Yeah, the first one was the first one was, I think, the first play of the game, or the second play.
Yeah, I mean I remember thinking after about 5 minutes that if Dubose doesn't create something, they've got nothing. Because you had Onras, who's not really got an offensive role in particular. He's kind of hustle guy, cutting guy. You have Ali Hodzic, who was going up against Cook, who's got a couple of inches on him. He's a tough guy to score on one-on-one. And Ali Hodzic isn't really the guy who you just give the ball to make an offensive play. He's the guy who kind of knits everything together, dribble handoffs, rolls, moves, makes all the smart plays, but he's not a fantastic finisher. And Palzia, who is basically a shooter, and therefore needs somebody to get him open. And it was all on Dubose, and it didn't work. And Sheffield are, without doubt, the best defensive team in the league at the moment. It's not a comparison with anybody else that I can see. They're not fouling as much. They've kind of cut that down, and they all understand the need to both pressure physically and also when to help. There's a lot more help about them. Ramsey in particular is quick. And they brought Allen off the bench, and he fitted in really well in this game coming off the bench.
He came on. He scored 8 in a row, and then Stewart scored 5 of 9 in a row. The bench actually were outscoring the starters after about 15 minutes. Sheffield were out to 36-19.
Yeah, and there's no excuse on Caledonia on this one, because they played on home on Thursday night. They travelled down to Sheffield on a Saturday. They had a practice on the Saturday night. They should have been ready for that game. And they didn't give the impression that they were ready for it. Or alternatively, which might be the case, they've got some issues to resolve in relation to scoring the ball regularly in the BBL. And they're another team which is a little bit like Surrey. They're a bit overloaded at the wing spot because they have Paliza. Okay, I beg your pardon for that. Paliza, Buttrick, Kyle Johnson, who's basically a wing, Fraser Malcolm, and Onwas. That's 5 guys, who are there's not much to distinguish them. Certainly off the dribble, there's not much to distinguish them. Kyle Johnson's probably got a little bit more off the dribble. But the other 4, are basically guys who are going to finish plays, shooters, whatever, or hustle players. And that puts a lot onto the guards, because neither Mua nor Ali Hodzic is an out-and-out big man scorer. And Mua didn't shoot the ball in 17 minutes in this game. You got a big guy in the court for 17 minutes. And he didn't get a shot up. That's not the way of getting him to play hard if he ain't touching the ball. So they've got that. And then the guard spot, they've got 2 point guards on the roster who aren't playing, in Bunyan and Jovicic. And not Bunyan and Jimenez, sorry. Jovicic, who actually played quite well in this game, made some shots, but he had 16 and they still got beat by 20. And then Dubose and Whelan, who have got a massive load, I think. And unfortunately, against some teams who aren't quite where they need to be defensively, they will carry that load. But Dubose had 8 turnovers, 7 assists and 8 turnovers in this game. That's a hell of a lot of usage. 20 points, 7 assists, and 8 turnovers. That suggests that the ball's ending up in your hand a lot of the time, and he's playing. I think he's doing everything the coach could ask. I'm not in any way critical of him for having the turnovers. It's just a question of how much he's having to do, which is really impacting them. So they've got to make some assessments as to where is their offense going to run through. I think they're a very equal opportunity at the moment, but the problem with equal opportunity is it means that the ball moves around, but it basically ends up back in the hands of Dubose Whelan. and they're in some pretty patterns, but they weren't in this game. And then the other end of it, Sheffield, are moving the ball really nicely. Kipper Nichols not missing a shot and fitting in like you'd expect. There are a bunch of pretty seasoned vets, apart from, as you say, Alan and Stewart, who are both guys who are clearly capable, have got enough going for them, and appear to have bought in to what the coach wants. And the rest of them are vets. Adekoya fits in as the stretch, and people aren't guarding him properly. And then the balls are being moved around. The balls being moved around, so it's focus on any of them. So other than Bennett tiptoeing the line a couple of times, I can't find anything bad to say about Sheffield. And actually more, and even that's more on the ref who's looking at the basket. Instead of doing what the European ref was doing, which is checking his toes. I thought Sheffield, we might have to get to that kind of conclusion that, Sheffield off a real. They have to do it on the road, and they have to actually score some points on the road. I think that's probably the thing they have to do. But they certainly enjoy the new arena. And they scored 86 last week on Newcastle. They scored 96 on Caledonia. Their weaknesses is can they get over that kind of 70-point barrier?
That's the thing we say. But defensively they won't let it get away from them, so they can still win in the 70s.
So if at the point, they're going to grind tables down. If they can keep scoring ball with the degree of the degree of precision that they are, it may well be that we're looking at them kind of separating themselves a little bit.
They're definitely on my upward trajectory list, Sheffield,
and as opposed to Plymouth being on your spiral list.
If I had a spiral watch, they would be on it. Unfortunately, my spiral watch is broken. The Nichols, to be honest with you, Caledonia never looked like having enough offense to make a comeback, and Sheffield were really good. Nichols 14, Pipkins 13, Adekoya 13, 5 guys in double figures, 42 bench points, 22 points off turnovers. Just all the good stuff, really. DeBose 20 points and 7 assists. I wasn't going to mention the turnovers, but you already did. Jovicic 5 of 7 for 16 points. Buttrick 14 points. I was going to mention they had 21 turnovers as a team, which didn't help them. Let's go to the last game, Northwest Derby. Obviously, still no Riley or Robertson for Cheshire Phoenix 83, Manchester Giants 67. Nick's out to an 11-4 lead, but Anderson and Stampley hit some threes. Giants took a bit of a lead late on in the first quarter. You always think on a back-to-back that the team on the back-to-back probably will go for a quarter or maybe a half before it starts to wear on them.
Yeah, well, certainly our experience was always that when I was coaching. It was like the first half we would be great. Ball would be in rhythm. We played last night. The ball would be moving. Everybody would be kind of vibe. But the problem with that is that if you've got a vet team, then the ball starts. Eventually the other team, if you get up early as well, the other team then plays harder and faster, which is the least thing you want. You want to slow down game in the second half, and your legs you end up kind of hanging on. Happened to us on multiple games, but. I never thought, Manchester were. This was as pretty straightforward a schedule game as you will ever see. I thought the highs of winning on the Saturday night, then going to Cheshire, who've been waiting for them, and Cheshire didn't actually play great. They were kind of in the first half. It was kind of who can blow the most wide open layup imaginable. They were challenging each other for it, and Skylar wasn't shooting the ball particularly well, but Maceo was, to be fair. But their energy was, I thought, greater than Manchester's. And I don't think you can run. It's tough to run. He's running the same guys. Manchester coach. He's basically running Jamal 40 minutes. Then a bunch of guards and Lawton who's got a dodgy ankle. And that against that Cheshire team, that's hard because they are long in the guard spot. Holden, Stevens, Jack, they're all guys who can, even Rideau, they're all guys who've got a bit of physicality about them. And Manchester don't really have that. Their guards are a bit smaller, Harris, Boussier and co. And they didn't really just have the kind of the threes that they were hitting against Leicester weren't dropping, the legs weren't quite there, and you just felt it was a question of time before Cheshire pulled away.
Yeah, Christian, Jack, Stevens, White hit threes. Knicks edged away in the second quarter. They led by 10 at half time, and then in the third quarter, Jack with 5, Ulf with 4 in a 12-2 run. Ulf played really well in that little spell where they blew it out to 60-38. And he looked like game over at that point. But to be fair to the Giants, they started the fourth quarter with the 7-0 run, got it to 60.
Cheshire were a bit happy on the bench, you know.
They were a bit happy.
Aaron Rye reminded me of Ali G with his cap on backwards, and lots of high-fiving and slapping and giggling and jumping up and down and doing the funny signs. And I think they are a team based on vibes, so I'm not knocking that. But I thought they lost their focus a little bit at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and Manchester came back, to be fair to them, and made some plays.
Yeah, and then Anderson hits a ridiculous 3. Lewis hits another one, and they got it to 11, but not quite enough.
I'd cashed out by then, Dan, didn't care.
Oh, there you go. Betting with Dave. So Jack, 24 points, 5 of 10 from 3-point range, and 6 rebounds. Holden, 12.7 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, and 7 drawn fouls. Yeah. Stevens, 11 points, and they had 23 points off turnovers as well.
Holden appears to be feast or famine, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, really. He's one game he's unstoppable, and the next game he's not there. He's being a rookie.
Anderson 16, Lawton 16, 7 of 8 shooting, and Stampley 8 points and 10 rebounds. Brings us to the end of the weekend, and we've got 37. Is it 7 o'clock or 7:30?
Must be 7:30, mustn't it? It's probably
7:30. Oh, so we got an hour.
We can't be getting to North London by 7 o'clock, Dan.
Yeah. Indeed. So we've got about an hour to kill before Newcastle take on London.
The kids or something.
Yeah. Ditto. I've got one upstairs.
Last date on Friday, so it's probably.
So am I working next Sunday? I haven't looked ahead. I'm supposed to. Have you got any more grumpy old man rants while I look at my calendar?
I don't think of anything, to be honest. Kind of, I've got it all out, I think. I just, I'm still. Oh yeah, Youngblood. That was the thing. Youngblood gets credit this week for calling the 5-minute 7-second timeout.
5 minutes, 7-second timeout.
Yeah, he called a timeout with 5 minutes, 7 seconds to go.
Yeah,
just to make himself popular. Let's get the timeout 7 seconds before the one we need to. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm still not a fan. I'm not going to get my head around that. This whole, stop the game just for no particular purpose. But anyway,
I am doing London against Surrey, which is a 4:30 tip-off on Sunday. So there might be a possibility of.
I think they should fly you back by helicopter.
Helicopter back for the thing.
I understand it's budget no option, nonetheless.
Well, I'm not sure that's quite how I know.
Maybe you could do it from BBL headquarters, so they could have the ability of being criticised from under their own. So we might be back on Sunday if I can get back in time. M1 dependent, I think, is the answer to that. But for now, enjoy the basketball. We've got Caledonia playing this week as well. They're going to Romania, the first European group game for them in the FIBA Europe Cup. We will enjoy whatever you watch. Dave and I will be back hopefully next Sunday, possibly Monday, to do it all over again. But for now, goodbye.